Dan, the floor is yours.
Hello, and welcome to our webinar. The topic today, FedNow Service Capabilities at Launch. I'm Dan Dotson from the Federal Reserve at St. Louis, and I'll be producing today's webinar. Before turning the call over to our speakers, I'll run through a few logistics. Regarding your webinar connection, all attendees are automatically set up to access this event through the web stream option. If you experience audio issues, you're welcome to dial into the phone number posted on the player page window. Please note that if you dial into the phone line for audio, you'll need to select the phone option in the media chooser. You can access the media chooser using the gear located at the top right corner of the speaker window. For optimal viewing of today's event, we recommend that you use Chrome, Firefox, or Edge as your web browser. If you need to expand the size of the slides, just use the Maximize button in the upper right corner of the slide window located on the webinar player page. We'll be taking audience questions during the webinar, and we'd love to hear from you. To submit a question, use the Ask a Question button located on the webinar player page. You can submit your questions at any time. I will turn it over to Bernadette Kasepka, Deputy Head of Product Management for the FedNow Service, to start today's webinar. Bernadette, back to you.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here today with all of you virtually. I'm Bernadette Kasepka, the Deputy Head of Product Management for the FedNow Service. Welcome to today's webinar. So today, we're going to focus on the capabilities of the FedNow Service at launch. We're also going to touch on potential future functionality that is under consideration, and we're going to do a deep dive into the A-to-A use case, which is really foundational for this service. Some of you may be familiar with some aspects of FedNow from other community events, but we've had such great growth in our community membership, so we wanted to give all of our members an overview of the features and functionality of the service, as well as discuss key use cases, so everyone has a foundation for other community content this year. So today, we will dig deeper into the account-to-account instant payments. A-to-A transactions are really critical, as it is truly the essence and at the heart of every payment use case. Even when using a directory that supports person-to-person services, which are increasing in popularity, when you peel back that onion at the root of the transaction, it really is an A-to-A payment. So today, as we focus on A-to-A, we're going to cover the basic credit transfer flow, including some of the key features that you'll need to be familiar with, like the timeout clock, which we're going to explain. And then we're going to discuss some considerations that you should be thinking about for operating in a 24/7 environment. Following today's webinar, I'm going to throw a plug out there for a roundtable session that's planned to focus on A-to-A use cases related specifically to brokerages. We think there's a lot of opportunity in this space for the industry. If there's interest in any other sessions focused on specific use cases or features, please share your interests with us. And then maybe I'll just do another plug for the Ask a Question feature. If you select that button, you will be able to submit a question for us to address throughout the presentation. So we encourage you to submit your questions early, and we're going to do our best to get to as many as we can. Jessica, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bernadette. All right, so good afternoon. I'm Jessica Freemeyer. We can turn over to slide 3, and I will kick us off with our service overview. So on slide 3, we'll have a quick discussion on the ecosystem for instant payments and FedNow in particular. As many of you know, the FedNow service is being built to make safe and efficient immediate payments accessible to all financial institutions in the U.S. This slide shows a very high-level view of the various players involved. In the dark blue, we have financial institutions which can participate in the service and initiate payments directly to the service. FedNow will also support the use of third-party service providers. Those are also represented here in dark blue, meaning that financial institutions can work with providers to send and receive payments or connect to the service on their behalf. These service providers could include payments processors, core banking providers, or corporate credit unions and bankers banks. Beyond those that interact directly with the FedNow service, it's also important to call out end users as well as industry providers, which we have here in light blue. End users, such as businesses, merchants, and individuals, can initiate instant payments through front-end applications or software provided by their institutions, or through innovation with other industry providers such as online and mobile banking providers, fintechs, or bill pay providers. FedNow will provide a benefit to the various players in the ecosystem. For financial institutions and service providers, the service will support those seeking to attract and retain customers, grow revenue pipelines, and for financial institutions, they'll also be able to reduce risk for interbank settlement and reduce their own operational costs through increased efficiencies. For end users, the benefit here for both consumers and businesses is really that they can instantly send and receive funds with confidence. Next slide, please. All right. So in the FedNow payment flow, we wanted to highlight a few points about the FedNow payment flow, which will be key as we dive into the use cases. We won't cover each step here in detail, given that we have some existing educational material on the FedNow payment flow, which is linked in the additional resources at the end of this presentation. So I'll go through a few key points now. First, the FedNow service will enable processing individual credit transfers in real time on a 24/7 by 365 basis. At the most fundamental level, the service provides interbank clearing and settlement that enables funds transfers from a sender's bank account to a receiver's bank account immediately and at any time. This functionality is really the bedrock of all use cases. So we'll talk a little bit now about the timing. So I want to point out that the scope of the FedNow service is depicted here with the dotted line that you see in the diagram. In terms of timing, we're expecting that the steps within this scope, so steps 2 to 6 here, will occur within just a few seconds. That represents the time that the sending FI or their service provider initiates the payment into the FedNow service in step 2, all the way through settlement in the financial institution's master account or that of their correspondent in step 6. That also means that the request for validation, so steps 4 and 5, must be completed within this time frame. So what that means is that the receiver financial institution will have to respond that it intends to accept the payment. To get a little bit more specific, the service will include a payment timeout clock for these steps that we just went through, so steps 2 to 6. And really the purpose of the payment timeout clock is to ensure that the payments cannot queue and process indefinitely, and to ensure predictability to sending FIs that payments will either be completed or rejected within a predetermined time frame. To give you a little bit more context in terms of what type of time frame we're thinking about, the current expectation is that the service will have a maximum time frame of around 20 seconds. But I do want to emphasize that this time frame will be finalized ahead of launch, and again, this is really meant to be a maximum time frame, given that we expect most payments will actually complete much sooner than the 20 seconds that we just noted. I'll move on to the next slide. And now that we've covered some of the foundational content, I'll pivot to the FedNow Roadmap. So we'll first start by talking a little bit about the use cases that FedNow will support, and then we'll transfer and transition into the features and functionality that will be offered by the service in day one. So in terms of our roadmap approach, we're taking a phased approach to deploying the FedNow service to ensure the initial release is brought to market as quickly as possible. On day one, we will offer core clearing and settlement functionality, as well as value-added features that will support a range of use cases. It is important to note that the FedNow service is use case agnostic, which means that with innovation from the industry, the service can support a broad range of use cases to solve your customers' instant payment needs right from the initial launch of the service. In addition to these core clearing and settlement capabilities, the Federal Reserve will also offer certain features and functionality to support banks in enabling various instant payments use cases for their customers. So now we'll talk a little bit about what that means in terms of how we're thinking about enabling certain use cases in our roadmap. So for Release 1, the features and functionality that we'll offer to banks to support how they support their customers with use cases will really focus on 2 use cases that we expect to gain traction initially. So this is really based off of industry feedback, and our focus is on account-to-account transfers and consumer-to-business bill pay. We'll support these two use cases by offering features like request for payment. So now just to touch on these two use cases in a little bit more detail. Account-to-account transfers are the essence and at the heart of every payment use case. At its lowest level, regardless of whether we're talking about a P2P use case, a B2B use case, or other use case types, these all map to account in terms of the core functionality that's needed to support the transaction between financial institutions. In our discussion today, Dan is going to go through the various account-to-account use cases for instant payments. For example, an end user transferring funds between their own accounts at different financial institutions. Consumer-to-business bill pay is another use case that will be available at launch to support your customer's ability to pay bills, avoiding risk of penalties and enabling better cash management. For future releases, additional use cases are being considered, such as person-to-person payments supported by an alias-based directory, and real-time payroll payments or disbursements. Before we do a deep dive on the account-to-account use case, we'll spend some time in the next few slides going through the features and functionality that will be available at launch, as well as features under consideration that will further enable use cases. So on this slide here, we'll start with the core clearing and settlement features that will be available on day one. So we'll go through each of these, and hopefully with the added context for each of these features, you can start planning for your organization in terms of how you'll be able to support a 24/7 instant payments environment. So these features are broken down into three categories. We'll start with the service level. So the FedNow service is 24/7 by 365 and will process payments in real time. From a reporting perspective, FedNow participants can access summary level reporting or transaction level reporting to support their monitoring and reconciliation needs. These reports will be available on an intraday basis or an end-of-day basis. The service will operate 24/7 with no planned maintenance windows. And from a connectivity perspective, participating banks or their service providers can access FedNow through the enhanced FedLine network, which will require some modest changes to the existing connections to support 24/7 by 365 processing. Switching over to transfers, the FedNow service will support credit transfers, and the service's message formats are based on the ISO 20022 standard, which will support various message types and use cases. The service will also have a maximum transaction dollar limit per credit transfer to restrict the size of potential fraudulent transactions. This transaction limit will be announced ahead of launch, and we're expecting that that transaction limit value will be aligned with the market at the time of launch. The service will also support the exchange of additional descriptive remittance-related information related to a payment invoice embedded within the ISO 20022 payment message or the request for payment messages. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about settlement. So settlement for the FedNow service occurs in the financial institution's master account, meaning that pre-funding is not needed for FedNow payments, and payments are considered final. The service will also support correspondent-respondent relationships where settlement occurs in a correspondent's master account. And from an accounting perspective, the Fed will have a 7-day accounting regime. This means that end-of-day balances, reserve interest calculations, account reconciliation will be calculated based on a 7-day accounting regime, but banks can choose if they want to be on a 5- or 7-day regime within their own institution. And finally, from an intraday credit perspective, this will be available under the same terms and conditions as for other Federal Reserve services today. So I know that we've covered a lot of content here so far. I'm just going to pause to see if there are any questions that came in. Bernadette, is there any questions to answer?
Yes, Jessica, we have 2 questions that came in. So the first one is, how will businesses connect to the FedNow service?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about that in the ecosystem slide, and really businesses would fall within that lighter blue box for end users. So businesses and consumers will be able to send FedNow payments through their participating financial institution. So those financial institutions or their service providers will be able to connect directly to the service. As a result of the financial institution's offerings, end users are able to benefit from instant payments and will be able to send payments through FedNow through those financial institutions or other industry provider offerings.
Great. And then we have another question which we get quite often. So this is, what is FedNow's strategy for interoperability and ISO message specs?
Okay, good question. So starting from an ISO spec perspective, really FedNow's approach was to develop the ISO 2002 message specs for Release 1 with the goal of remaining true to the ISO standard. So these specs were developed based on feedback from industry stakeholders. So we had an ISO 20022 industry work group. We also had direct input from the clearinghouse to enhance the compatibility of our specs for the FedNow service with those of the RTP service. Based on the collaboration we had with the industry, we anticipate that at release of the FedNow service, those ISO 2002 message specs will have significant alignment with RTP. And because of this alignment, that compatibility should help to support routing interoperability for the FedNow service, as well as end-to-end efficiency of payments and future innovation.
Okay, those are all the questions we have. Those were great ones. Please continue to send your questions.
All right, thanks, Bernadette. So moving on to slide 7, we covered the core clearing and settlement features on the last slide, and now we'll talk a little bit about the value-add features that the FedNow service will offer on day 1. And we'll also then cover some additional features that are potentially under consideration for the future. So these features are broken down by those that enable use cases, those that support safety and security, and those that enhance customer experience. So I'll walk through each of those that are in the Release 1 category on the left side. So from a use case enablement perspective, request for payment will be available day 1 since it's critical for various use cases, including both account-to-account and bill pay, as well as many others. This is a non-value message in which a payee requests a specific amount from a payer. We will also have a final confirmation of posting feature. This is an optional flow where the receiving financial institution can send a confirmation to the sending FI that funds have been posted to the receiver's account. To ensure the safety and security of the service, we'll also have message signing to ensure authentication and validity of message content. And we'll offer basic fraud controls. So these will be transaction-level controls to mitigate fraud risk by allowing financial institutions to set a transaction limit lower than the maximum credit transfer limit we just talked about on the last slide. As part of these basic fraud controls, we'll also support negative lists as well as reporting of fraud in-network and to FedNow. And then finally, to support customer experience, the service will have a number of different features and functionality. So first, the service will allow participants to broadcast when they go offline and come back online so that participants know which FIs cannot receive payments. Participants will be able to send liquidity transfers in support of liquidity needs for instant payments through the LMP functionality. This will enable them to transfer money between master accounts or between a master account and a joint account for a private sector system, and will be supported through an ISO message. There will also be a participant portal, which we have listed as the FedNow portal here, and this is a user interface that's available to banks. So this will be able to be used to support setting configurations or retrieving reports. And then finally, from an account balance perspective, participants will be able to obtain their account balance 24/7 every day of the year. So those are the value-added features for Release 1. In terms of the potential future features under consideration, we'll consider offering additional features in the initial period following launch to support alias-based payments such as directories, as well as fraud prevention, error resolution, or case management tools. Other features that we might consider might include support for bulk payments or enhanced remittance information. We'll continue to engage with the industry on these and other more complex considerations as we consider the different types of features and functionality that we'll offer in the future. Bernadette, I'll pause here again before we go into the participation types to see if there's any additional questions.
We have one question, Jessica, and the question is, will the FedNow service offer API capabilities?
So the FedNow Service is committed to fostering the nationwide reach of instant payments, and we recognize based on industry input that API access is critical, and we are considering it as part of our product roadmap. In terms of how we plan to approach APIs, we plan to take a phased approach with APIs. So what that means is that initially we're considering how APIs could be leveraged for a number of different purposes. This could include things like reporting transaction details, statuses and daily activity, and providing downloadable information such as message specs. So those are just a few examples in terms of how we're thinking about leveraging APIs for informational purposes. This is an area that still is under consideration though, so as we make some progress in finalizing the solution details, we'll be sure to share more information so that we can support the planning and ensure the ease of connectivity for financial institutions.
No other questions, just
All right. Okay, great. So now that we've gone through what the service will offer on day one, we'll close out the FedNow overview section by going through the various participation types that will be available to financial institutions initially. The FedNow participation types are flexible and are designed to accommodate a diverse customer base. Institutions can select the type that best fits their business or customer needs or risk tolerance. These participation types include receive only, send and receive, request for payment, settlement only, and FI to FI liquidity transfers. So we'll walk through each of these participation types and I'll call out a few key points related to each. So we'll start with the credit transfers. Of the credit transfer participation types, there's a receive only option. So this is an option for participants that choose to receive but not send customer credit transfers. This might be optimal for financial institutions that determine their business needs best align with receiving payments. A few points I'll note about receive only. If a receive only FI needs to return a credit transfer that they received, they will have the ability to return over the FedNow service. From an LMT perspective, receive-only participants will be enabled to accept financial institution to financial institution liquidity transfers by default, but they will have the opportunity to disable this if they wish. Moving on to the send and receive participation type. This participation type is available to those participants that will want to have the full capability of the service. So they might want to be able to send, receive, and return customer payments. By default, this participation type will also be able to send and/or receive FI to FI liquidity transfers, which can also be disabled if desired. Moving on to the request for payment participation type. This participation type enables the ability to receive requests for payments. This is really an offering for send and receive participants that we just covered. It will give those financial institutions the ability to receive requests for payment, requiring them to enable their customers to be able to respond to that request by initiating a credit transfer if that customer wishes to make a payment. Both receive only and send and receive participation types will be able to send requests for payments as part of their participation type. Moving on to the two participation types on the bottom, I'll start with LMT. So this will be available to those financial institutions that are looking to support liquidity needs for instant payments. This can be a standalone participation type for those that do not wish to enable other capabilities over the FedNow service, such as the credit transfer participation types we just talked about. Or as we noted earlier, it can also be enabled as part of the credit transfer participation types. This participation type allows financial institution transfers at specified times between master accounts or between master accounts and a joint account for the private sector system. Finally, there's a settlement-only option, and this is available to financial institutions that act as a correspondent and settle for their respondents in their master account. For correspondents that do not wish to enable any other FedNow capabilities, such as the ones that we just discussed, they can set up this participation type to allow them to receive real-time notices of debits and credits, as well as FedNow Service reports for their respondents' activity. if correspondents don't wish to send and receive any payments or receive these notifications. They don't need to establish any participation, however, and they'll still be able to settle in their master account and receive Federal Reserve accounting reports to support their reporting and reconciliation needs. I know this is a lot of information that we just shared in terms of participation types, and I'll note that on the next slide, in slide 9, we've provided a summary of what is enabled with each participation type for your reference. So hopefully this will provide a helpful overview in terms of what each participation type can do in terms of sending and receiving customer credit transfers, returning customer credit transfers, FI liquidity transfers, and then also requests for payment. So I won't walk through this in detail, but it should provide a summary of some of the details that we just covered. I know that was a lot of information, but that is really what we wanted to cover from a FedNow Service perspective before we transition to the account-to-account use case deep dive that Dana will do. But we're going to take a break from the material now to answer some of the questions that have been coming in. Bernadette, any questions that we want to answer at this time?
We do. We have some questions. 1 second, Jessica, as we get this ready here. Okay, so the first question is send only an option for a FedNow Service participant?
At this time, we don't support send only as a participation type. We have the send and receive participation type.
Okay. The second question we have is, are LMTs only available to financial institutions with a master account at the Federal Reserve?
LMT transactions are also available to those who participate in a private sector instant payment service backed by a joint account maintained by the Federal Reserve Bank. So LMT can really support transfers between a master account or between a master account and a joint account. So these transactions can either go to the master account of the FI or to the correspondence account as well.
Okay. And the last question we have is, will there be rules around implementation? For example, are you going to say the entire bank has to go live with receive or an entire ABA within a bank, or can we offer only receive to certain customers' segments?
So we're designing our participation types to be flexible, and we recognize that financial institutions will have different business and customer needs. So with that being said, financial institutions will have the ability to determine the participation type that they want to enable and for which customers and accounts they want to be able to offer the service and enable those participation types for. So we're hoping that will provide flexibility in terms of the different customers that financial institutions support. There are no rules by institution. Participation types are at the RTN level.
Okay, perfect. No other questions at this time.
All right. Thanks, Bernadette, and thanks for all of the questions. At this time, I will turn it over to my colleague, Dana Bernard, who will cover the account-to-account use case.
Next slide. And moving to slide 12. Jessica mentioned, I'll be walking you through the A-to-A use cases, which are the focus of our time here today. Let's dive into how A-to-A can help you deliver a more transparent, instant payment experience to your customers, giving them greater flexibility and control over their finances. Research by the Federal Reserve found that consumers and businesses consistently rank immediate funds availability and around-the-clock access to funds as the top benefits for instant payment. When specifically asked about the A-to-A use cases, both groups prioritize a preference for moving funds between their accounts. There is also an interest in transferring funds between accounts at different financial institutions and in funding prepaid cards and or mobile wallets. Aside from the marketable benefits of offering the service to your customers, this faster A-to-A service reduces credit and settlement risk for financial institutions and funding delays for new accounts. Next slide. Based on research and industry feedback, there are several A-to-A use cases that can be supported with industry innovation. We see A-to-A as the backbone of FedNow. It's the basic ability to move funds from one account to another. FedNow can support any account types, including those backing loans, credit cards, deposit and investment accounts, and others, etc. The A-to-A use cases we'll go through today include me-to-me, me-to-you, on-us transfers, funding brokerage accounts, and mobile wallets. As we go through each, we'll call out some examples and benefits to both you and your customers. Next slide. We know that in today's world, it can take up to 3 days to transfer funds between two accounts that I own, say between a checking account and a savings account at a separate institution. Let's say I needed to transfer money between accounts so that I can make a bill payment. I could potentially be facing a late fee if I don't time the transfer correctly. With FedNow, these funds will move instantly, helping consumers to avoid late fees. Other me-to-me use cases can include funding a new account that was also just opened. Now, thinking about me-to-you, note that this A-to-A use case includes payments between two individuals. For example, let's say your college student needs money deposited into their account while they're away at school. FedNow supports instant money movement between accounts using an RTN and account number. Next slide. There can be significant efficiency gains for a business with the honest use case, which is the ability to move funds across accounts at the same financial institution. In our discussions with some institutions, many have shared that one of their pain points is the number of checks that they write within their organization or across subsidiaries. We think there could be an opportunity here to leverage the FedNow service to support these transfers and benefit from its instant clearing and settlement functionality. So later on, we'd like to better understand how FedNow could provide a better and more streamlined solution to move this money to the right place. Next slide. Another area that FedNow will support industry innovation is with the funding of brokerage accounts. Today, many of these accounts must be funded at opening to confirm their activation, which adds complication within the customer experience. The ability for a firm's clients to capitalize on market conditions and instantly make trades not only presents a unique competitive advantage, but ultimately reduces the firm's risk by providing the ability to cover margin and cash calls expeditiously. Increased cash on hand for consumers reassures them that they can access funds on demand as the market changes, and also reassures them that they will have access to funds as needed. As Jessica mentioned earlier, on June 2nd, we will be hosting a roundtable discussion for brokerage firms that are interested in participating and sharing more of their feedback in detail with us. Please look out for outreach on these in the coming weeks as we're looking forward to your comments. Next slide. Similar to brokerage accounts, instant payments could also support the funding and defunding of mobile wallets. As mentioned earlier, FedNow supports a request for payment that could be sent from the mobile wallet operator to the customer to fund the wallet directly. That RFP, or the request for payment, could be initiated via a credit push that could be used for both funding and defunding. This results in a faster funding time for the consumer and faster money movement between these accounts. This is just one example of how you can begin to consider what third-party vendors can be a part of your overall FedNow readiness planning. Next slide. Organizations considering FedNow will need to make decisions about any potential changes to their technology, services, and software ahead of implementation. This includes internal systems and those managed by external partners. As you review this slide, take note of the considerations listed here. A participating financial institution will need to have a comprehensive understanding of how to manage its core and other systems while connected to the FedNow service, from troubleshooting outages to ongoing monitoring. Financial institutions in particular should also consider their legal counsel to determine compliance with applicable consumer protection laws and regulations. Hopefully, you have found today's webinar to be informative and helpful. The FedNow team sees A2A as one of the catalysts for instant payments in the industry. As a reminder, our next event will be on June 2nd, focusing on the brokerage A2A use case, as mentioned earlier. We invite you to learn more about the FedNow service and have provided a few resources at the end of this presentation to help you do so. Lastly, you'll also receive a post-event survey to share your feedback with us on today's event. We look forward to hearing from you. Let's pause to see if we have any questions. Bernadette?
We do. Okay, first question is, Jessica, I'll direct this one to you. How will FedNow support bill payment?
Thanks, Bernadette. All right, so at launch, the FedNow service will be focusing on consumer-to-business bill payment. So this really will focus on supporting one-time bill payment and also recurring bill payments. So to support this, we're going to have certain value-added features that we'll offer, like request for payment, as well as supporting additional things such as responses when a request for payment is received, as well as feature pay capabilities. From a bill payment perspective, we'll also support payments from all account types at financial institutions. In terms of future releases, FedNow Service will enable additional capabilities that we can expand our support for bill payment, and really here we'll start to focus on supporting the business-to-business use cases for bill pay. So this could include things like purchase of a building, supplies, wholesale groceries, or commercial services, just to name a few examples. And really what we would look to do, look to support here would be support more complex remittance details to support the bill pay use case.
Perfect. Okay, next question we have, Dana, I'll send this one your way. So while A2A is planned for initial rollout, is there anything preventing P2P or P2B transaction from flowing through FedNow?
So the FedNow service is use case agnostic. Financial institutions and providers and participants are able to use the service to support a variety of use cases. At launch, participants will be able to use if there's a current directory solution or alias-based service in the market, they'll be able to use that to fulfill their account-to-account transfer needs.
Okay, thanks, Dana. All right, another question, Jessica, this one's for you. What fraud capabilities will FedNow offer to support an instant payment environment?
Sure. So at launch, the FedNow service will support tools for fraud mitigation, such as the ability to set lower transaction value limits. So these lower transaction value limits would be lower than the credit transfer limit that we set globally for the FedNow service. We'll also support tools such as the ability to reject transactions to or from specific accounts, and we'll also have the ability to report fraud. These tools are really intended to help participating banks to assist them in their role as the primary line of defense against fraudulent transactions. As our experience grows with the service, though, and as part of our future roadmap, we would consider offering additional fraud support tools that will support banks in their role to mitigate fraud.
Okay, great. Okay, next question. Dana, I'm going to send this one your way. How should financial institutions engage their service providers as they prepare for FedNow?
Thank you, Bernadette. We encourage financial institutions to engage with their service providers, such as core providers or payments processors, today to start learning about the Instant Payments Roadmap for their offerings and to learn more about how they may support you in their FedNow journey. We suggest you first think through how you might leverage service providers for FedNow. For example, do you plan to implement FedNow as a fully outsourced solution or use a blended approach where you outsource some activity but maintain some processing in-house? Then we encourage you to learn more about your service provider or how they can meet your needs, whether it be related to sending or receiving FedNow transactions and the associated requirements for instant payments, or supporting end-user services that are integrated with FedNow, such as online and mobile banking.
Thanks, Dana. Okay, next question. Jessica, I'll send this one your way. If your master account is out of money or has a low balance, will the transaction reject?
Sure. So the reserve banks are going to monitor FedNow service activity only on a post hoc basis. So really the expectation here is that financial institutions will manage their master account balances and will offer tools such as the availability to inquire on your account balance 24/7 to support that. With that being said, it is possible for transactions to settle when there are insufficient funds in a master account, and in those cases, standard intraday and overnight overdraft fees will apply.
Okay, one more for you, Jessica. How do financial institutions reject payments if it happens within seconds? Can you share examples of a payment being rejected?
Yes. So financial institutions are going to want to review their own processes with legal and policy and other factors to think through how payment rejections might be handled. But in terms of some examples, I can offer a few. So when the receiving financial institution is expected to verify if the account is a valid account at the institution and eligible for funds, if this criteria isn't met, then that might be kind of an opportunity where that payment is rejected. Another example is a receiving financial institution may reject the payment if they don't have a beneficiary account on their books. There's likely a few other areas where they might want to verify as well in terms of confirming whether or not a payment should be accepted or rejected.
Okay, great. Okay, next question, Dana, this one is for you. Oops, sorry. How will the FedNow service price transactions?
The Federal Reserve has not yet determined pricing that will be applicable to the FedNow service. The fee structure and schedule will be informed by the board's assessment of market practices at the time of implementation and will be published in advance of the launch of the service.
Okay. Next question, Jessica, this one's for you. Will community banks be able to access FedNow directly, or will they be required to work through a core provider or other third party?
Sure. So community banks will have the option in terms of how they want to access FedNow, whether directly or through a service provider. So really, our FedNow service participation model is intended to be flexible and align with the needs of various financial institutions. It'll allow participants that maintain an existing FedLine connection to originate and receive messages on behalf of themselves or any other participant, provided proper agreements are in place. But the FedNow service will also allow participating financial institutions to designate and use connection points owned by other service providers. So these service providers could be correspondent banks, corporate credit unions, processors. So really it's up to the community bank and kind of their business customer needs in terms of how they want to access, whether it's direct or through a provider, and we'll support both of those options.
Okay. Next question, Dana, for you. How could we send PAX 04 return on receive persona?
A participant with a receive-only profile will be enabled to return payments through a PAX 004 message.
Okay, and then question 9. What is the date for FedNow Go Live?
Bernadette, is that one for me as well?
Way. Yes, please.
We anticipate the general availability for FedNow to be in 2023. As we get closer to launch, we'll provide more specific details.
Okay. All right, give us a moment. We're going to see if there's any additional questions that have come in. Okay. Jessica, I'm going to send this one your way. With A to A, will we not be able to use the proxy field in the ISO 20022 message, or will the message require account number determined by an external directory?
The implementation of the ISO 20022 messages for the FedNow service will enable the use of proxies on day one, so the message will not require account numbers.
Okay, Jessica, another one for you. Will banks in U.S. territories such as Puerto Rico be able to join FedNow?
The service initially is going to be for U.S. banks only.
Okay, let me go back and see if there's any additional questions. Okay, we have another question here. Can we send a future dated payment through FedNow? I will take this one. So all payments will be processed instantly, so payment warehousing will not be possible. Okay, we have another question here. What is the SLA, 20 seconds or 15 seconds? How much time for receiving financial institution? So I'll take this one as well. The payment timeout clock is expected to be 20 seconds, but this may change. Right now our working assumption is 20 seconds. So the receiver financial institution will have a default reserve time of 5 seconds. Okay, let me see if there's any other questions. There's a question, when a bank signs up for FedNow, is this send only or send and receive on day 0? So banks financial institutions will have the opportunity to self-select what they would like to sign up for. So they have the option to be a send and receive participant, or they can be a receive only participant. We do not have an option of being a send only participant. Okay, Jessica, actually Dana, I'm going to send this one your way. What does the marketing plan for FedNow look like?
Well, as many of you know, the Federal Reserve Banks, we have an ongoing marketing and outreach and education initiatives that are planned. We're working closely with a variety of stakeholders in the industry, from financial institutions to service providers to businesses, to drive awareness and engagement. Currently, we have over 100 financial institutions engaged in our pilot program who are collaboratively working with our customers or with their customers to drive use of the service. So stay tuned and please continue to look at the community website to learn more about upcoming events and features.
Okay, we have another question here. If a financial institution is receiving the payment via a correspondent, will the 20-second clock still be valid for the ultimate receiving financial institution? So yes, the clock will still be 20 seconds, and it's basically around the settlement time, right? So it includes sending a request to the receiving financial institution of whether they're able to accept that payment. They will respond, and then the transaction settles. So the clock is relevant despite where the transaction settles, either the master account or correspondent. Okay, let me check if there's any additional questions. Okay, we'll give it one more minute to see if there's any additional questions. Okay, another question came in here. Will Release 1 support tokenized account numbers? So tokenized account numbers such as aliases are under consideration for future releases. So we touched a bit on the P2P use case and that there's a lot of demand for this, and that there would be additional functionality that the Federal Reserve is exploring for future releases to support P2P payments. Okay, and then we have a clarification. This was on the question around transactions for banks outside of the U.S., but within U.S. territory. So, for example, Puerto Rico. So there are some that are not allowed direct access due to their charter, but we have some that would be directly connected and have full charters. So if there's additional questions on that, I suggest you reach out and we can have a further conversation around kind of the accessibility to FedNow. Okay, let me do one final check. I don't see any additional questions. So I just wanted to thank everyone for their time today and participating and asking such great questions. I hope you walk away today with a better understanding of what FedNow will look like when we launch in 2023, and we look forward to engaging with you at future community events. Thank you and have a great afternoon.